Welcome,
Awesome.
everyone. Thank you for joining us for this webinar being co-presented by CLA and Sage Intact. Our presenters today are Taylor Hartman. She is a member of CLA's digital growth team with several years of experience in technology and the software industry, both here in the US and in Canada. Taylor is passionate about nonprofits and meeting her clients where they are in their digital journey. She is committed to helping you find the best tools to fit your needs. I'm also pleased to welcome Linda Pinion, who has been with Sage for a dozen years or so. She's got great passion for accounting and especially for nonprofits. She's been a fixture in Sage Intact for many years and is a recognized thought leader and expert on accounting software. So with that, I'll hand it off to the two of you.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Thank you so much.
And I think, Taylor, you're going to kick things off for us?
Oh, okay. Yeah, sure. Go ahead. I'll go ahead then. So today we are going to be talking about survival guide for nonprofits. And just like Ed introduced, we've got Linda from Sage, who is going to be doing our demo today, and myself from CLA, who's just going to talk a bit about CLA and our Sage Intact practice as well. So we can get started.
So Ed, you'll need to forward the slides for us. There we go.
Thank you. Thank you.
And these are our presenters, and I'll just move us on. Taylor, back to you.
Yes, housekeeping. So I'm just going to cover this quickly before we jump in. So just so everyone knows, this session is being recorded, and we will be sharing a copy of the recording after the webinar with everyone. And then we will also be taking questions at the end, but feel free to submit your questions throughout the webinar in the chat box.
And I think what we'll do first is launch our first polling question. Or maybe we won't launch our first polling question. Here we go. Are you able to see that now?
I cannot see it.
Okay.
I still see that. There we go.
There
we go.
Beautiful.
So we like to do these polls along the way, and it helps us, and it also, more importantly, helps you as an attendee to know what others in your field are thinking about or what they're doing as part of their initiatives. So this one is, what frustrates you the most? Lack of timely information, re-entering the same data, digging for paper documents and receipts, or looking for lost socks from the dryer. So if you'll take a couple of seconds and answer, we would appreciate it. And Ed will be the monitor of the poll and will give us the results. I'm going to bet on lack of timely information.
Well, we've got some interesting data here, Linda. 40% of our respondents are frustrated about re-entering the same data.
There you go.
30% lack of timely information, 20% digging for paper documents and receipts, and a resounding 10% looking for lost socks in the dryer.
I always like to have something that's fun at the end, just a little lightheartedness, and I'm sure all of us have looked for those lost socks. I don't know what happens to them in the dryer, but they seem to disappear. I know they do at my house, and it's hard to match them up when you can't find that other mate. All right, so thank you for participating. And one of the things that I notice is that birds of a feather flock together. So there's a lot of you that are tired of re-entering data. There are several of you who have a lack of up-to-date information and visibility to that information. So we're going to show you some things today that can help in those two areas. And I am not seeing slides.
You're not? Okay, my bad. I think are you seeing them now?
I'm seeing the poll results.
Oh, goodness.
So we're getting closer.
All right. My apologies. First time doing a webinar in quite a while. Okay. Are you seeing the
Still,
screen now?
I'm still seeing the poll results.
Yep.
I do not see slides.
Okay. Let's
I do
see.
now.
There
We're,
we
we're,
go.
we're perfect. All
Awesome.
right. So
Perfect.
it's to you, Taylor.
Alrighty, thank you, thank you. Well, thank you guys all for your patience while we are getting that sorted. So, as kind of Ed introduced a bit already, I am Taylor Hartman. I work at CLA out of our Minneapolis office on our Sage Intact team. So I am a digital growth senior with our team, and my role is to essentially support clients who are interested in looking at Sage Intact as a potential fit for them. So I'm going to be talking a bit, like I said, about CLA and our practice. So who is CLA? Personally, I think the less exciting answer is that we're just a professional services firm, even though we are one of the nation's leading professional services firms. But nonetheless, I still think that this right here, our four essential elements, really kind of encompasses who we are as a firm and really speaks volumes to that too. So starting with our family culture, I really think that this kind of includes our purpose and our promise. Essentially, we see ourselves as one big family, and at the end of the day, we just want to help our clients create opportunities, our family members create opportunities, as well as just get to know you. And the relationship with you at the end of the day is our main priority. And so I feel like our family kind of covers our purpose and our promise. And then I also like to shout out our strategic advantages. We do have deep industry specialization at CLA, and that actually spans across 14 different industries. Next slide, please, Ed.
Sure.
Looking a bit further at our non-for-profit industry specifically, we do work with over 9,000 nonprofits here at CLA. And if you want to understand a bit more of the breakdown of that, we have kind of laid that out right there. We've worked with memberships and associations. We've worked with foundations, religious organizations, etc. So we do have lots of experience with lots of different nonprofits. I also like to shout out that we do have over 500 professionals that work in this industry at CLA. So as I kind of mentioned earlier, CLA is a national firm. So we do have professionals in nonprofit all over the US, which means that we have access to resources kind of everywhere, which is really great. On to the next slide, please. All right, now about our actual partnership with Sage Intact. So way back in the 90s, actually, CLA had just sold their Great Plains practice and were looking for a new solution for their rapidly growing outsourcing business. They came across Sage Intact, started viewing demos, really loved it, and became a partner about early 2001. Shortly after that, we actually became we became a user first, my apologies. And then shortly afterwards, we became a business partner. So first became a user, really shortly afterwards became a partner. And since then, we have been selling Sage Intact. So we have 20 years in the space as a VAR partner. We've been Partner of the Year a couple of times throughout those years. A couple of other rewards. We've gotten, a highest net promoter score, which is based off of kind of a survey following an implementation with the client. So that's really awesome that we like to point out. And once again, we do have that deep industry expertise. We have performed about 2,000 implementations, between the 20 years that we have done this. And our team does consist of about 50 plus consultants who are actually, some of them are former CPAs, which is really great to have on your implementation team. Next slide, please. All right, and then lastly, I just want to touch on CLA's, intact project delivery methodology. So I guess the question is, what makes different partners, different when implementing your or solutions? And so the thing that kind of really differentiates that entire process, or which way you go, is going to be an implementation. That is something that we at CLA view as one of the most important parts of software selection and migrating over to a new system. We really focus on designing our process so that we really take into consideration what our clients' needs are, that we understand them, and that we're going to set up their system the best that, you know, they would want it to be set up, as well as, you know, make sure that they're set up for success moving forward. And so the way that we do that is through our phased intact implementation methodology approach. The biggest phase, I would say, after initiation is going to be the define. That's where we're going to really sit down, understand your needs, your processes, give some best recommendations or best practices, and really just understand, like I said, how we should set up your system so that it fits your organization specifically. And then after that, we do have our build and model phases, which is when we get the system all ready for you. And then we have our deploy, which is when we go live. I do also like to point out that after go live, you know, we're not going to just abandon you and leave you hanging. We want to make sure that we teach you everything, set you up for success. So there is 60 days post go live implementation support as well. So there really should be a 6 phase. But I do like to mention that. And then there is ongoing support options following that too. So just to get an idea of how we do approach intact implementations, I did want to kind of go through that. I believe that is the end of my slides, if I'm correct, Ed.
I think you're right. I think it's time to pass the baton to Linda.
Perfect. All righty. Well, I will pass it over to Linda then. Thank you.
All right. So I have a question for the audience. Just think about, what does a survival kit look like? What do you have in your bag of tricks that's going to help you when you get in a pickle? Is it really just some basic things, paper clips, scissors, tape, or do you have that super tool, that tool that does everything? You can see I have a picture here of a tool that just has every kind of gadget on it you can imagine. It can be a knife, it can be a bottle opener, it can, you know, probably perform some minor surgeries. So what does that look like for you? And how can we make that an easier transition for you when you find yourself where you are just really having to cut and paste and put things together? Wouldn't you like to have that super tool as well? Next slide. So let's talk about why having a survival kit is really necessary in these days. One of the reasons, the top reason, is because nonprofits are being challenged in all different directions. They've always had the responsibility to make sure that, you know, they were good stewards of the money and doing the right thing from a compliance standpoint. But there's things that are changing, the complexity of accounting and having multiple funding streams. Having all this information is one thing. More importantly is being able to access that information, pull that information out, get it into a report and or a dashboard that you can share, and that you know you're confident about the information that's on that report, that it is accurate and timely. Some of you may be managing different funds and grants. You may have struggled with that because you didn't have that automated, you didn't have processes and procedures around that. And there are certainly compliance and activities that need to be done if you are processing grants. At the end of the month, you may find yourself in that pickle because you are taking way too long to close the month out. And one of those activities that you do at month end is cost allocations. For those of you who are doing that manually, I'm sorry. However, I have some great news for you. We can help you with that. We can do some automation of those cost allocations, and that's going to free up some of that month-end close time. Of course, you know, all of the internal controls and compliance, we have several ways for you to get to that information. The easiest way in Sage Intacct is, of course, to push all of that to a compliance dashboard. And part of that dashboarding process might even be to set up a dashboard for your auditors. And then last but certainly not least is cash management, and being able to know exactly where you're at where you are from an analysis perspective, making sure that you're doing all your bank reconciliations in a timely manner. That's all part of cash management. Next slide.
Okay.
So how do you do that when all of us, many of us, I'll say, are being tasked with doing more with less people or less resources? It's that lean and mean kind of formula or model that many organizations are faced with. In some cases, you may have volunteers and folks that are coming in to help, but you may be limited with the number of full-time everyday employees. So a lot of those activities, you're being tasked to do more than what you did in the past. And if you are not taking advantage of cloud technology, that means that you're going to an office and you are somewhat tethered to that office. So you don't have that flexibility of being able to access your information from anywhere, anytime. So you may be just surviving and not thriving. And that's what we want to look at today, is how we can help you thrive and not just survive. Next.
Linda, I'm going to put up our next polling question now.
All right. Sounds good to me. So what are you working on now? Are you preparing for 2024? Are you looking at artificial intelligence and automation? Have you recognized that you need dashboards? Or maybe you're just trying to make it through the week. So I'm going to say we need dashboards. So we'll give it a couple seconds.
All of our answers are in, and our leading response is 40% preparing for 2024. And
there you go.
The others are tied. Oh, we've got a couple more votes. I have to take that back. Now we have a tie for first place with 29% prepping for 2024, 29% looking at AI and automation, 25% looking for dashboards. So interesting feedback.
All right. So the good news is we have something for everyone today. So we'll be touching on all of those things when we get into product. And again, I'm not seeing, there we go. Great. We're back to slides. So we just need to advance one more. All right. So how do we do this? How do we get you to a point where you are thriving and not just surviving? Well, first of all, we need to create that strong back office. And for many organizations, the day-to-day is maybe not so difficult, but what happens is every 30 days, month end comes along. And I've been part of that month end process. So I know that when month end rolls around, nothing else gets done except month end. If you're part of that team, you kind of leave your day-to-day activities and you focus on closing the month, which means that everything else that you normally do is kind of stacking up on your desk. So what does that mean? You're pretty stressed out by the time you get the month closed, because now you look at this pile of work that you have to do. And there's a lot of it. And it's not just at month end, but there's also things that you want to do at year end as well. So what we want to focus on is helping find ways that you can streamline those processes, that you can really reduce what you're doing manually, maybe even reducing things that you're doing in spreadsheets, and automate. So back to the poll, you know, part of that was to understand how many of you are interested in automation and how that can help you. That also leads right into being ready. So when we think about dashboards and we think about having an organized way to look at all of our information, dashboards are a great way to do that. Being ready for the auditors and having all that organized, we found that just that simple level of dashboarding for the auditors has reduced the audit fee for many of our organizations using Sage Intacct. So we want to make sure that you're ready whenever you need to be ready. So ready throughout the year. And maybe, that touches on some other areas of your organization, like automating expense tracking or grant reporting or tracking of time. We want to make those tactical activities that you have to do, we want to make them as easy and as automated as possible. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about what we're going to see in product. I always like to give a roadmap of what I'm going to show you before I go into software. We're going to start with visibility. And this is so key. One of the things that people have shared with us from the field is that it's not a lack of data. Everybody has plenty of data. The challenge is getting that data into that organized way of seeing it and accessing it. I like to think of it as access to information. And so we're going to start with role-based dashboards, and I'm also going to point out on one specific dashboard the use of checklists. And checklists are really something that we've all done, and you may be doing them today as a manual step, but checklists are great. We're just going to help you automate that. Along the way, we're going to talk about some of the foundational components in Sage Intacct, things that make it easier for you to do that reporting, for you to filter and slice and dice the data, and also easier for you to communicate with other Sage Intacct users. In the optimization area, there are some key areas that I wanted to highlight today. One of them is around managing spend. I know in nonprofits and for-profits, does not matter. All companies and organizations, when you ask them, would you like to control your spend better? It's a resounding yes. Everybody wants to control spend. So how do we do that? What can you do in Sage Intacct that can help you manage your spend? We'll talk about journal entry efficiencies. So journal entries, people want to know how to do journal entries in software. They want to see that because that's what they do. We all of us accountants, that's what we kind of, have as our mantra. How do you do a journal entry? And so we want to look at some of the ways that we can help you with the efficiencies and utilize AI in doing that. The bank reconciliation, I don't know of too many people that love doing bank recs. However, we've been on a journey with bank reconciliation and we've improved it. We take advantage of connecting to the Sage Banking Cloud, getting all that information to you every 4 hours. So if you wanted to, you could do a bank rec every day. Now, I don't know many people that would want to, however, you could. And then we're also doing some things with matching those transactions and speeding up that whole process of doing a reconciliation. Allocations, I touched on that with, something that you do at the end of the month. We actually have two different ways of doing allocations in Sage Intacct. One is that dynamic allocations that we do at the end of the month. The other is what we call transaction allocations, which is done at the time that we enter the transaction. So those allocations are important, something that you're probably doing through a journal entry and you're doing them manually. And then, of course, AP automation. How do we make that faster? How do we empower, if you will, your vendors, your suppliers to get those invoices, those AP invoices to you without you needing to key them in? So that redundancy of keying and scanning and, looking at pieces of paper, we want that to move away as much as possible. So I'll introduce you to AP automation and talk to you and show you how those bills can get uploaded automatically. All right, so I think I have one more slide that's just Sage Intacct in action. And then Ed, if you could give me, yes, if you'll give me presenter rights, I'm going to turn my camera off for bandwidth. But let's just make sure. Now, I clicked on show my screen, but I want to make sure. Can you see Sage Intacct?
Yes.
Okay. All right. That's perfect. So let me clean up my view here so that it doesn't look quite so messy. And let me move this little guy down. And just in case you're wondering, I do like to talk out loud to myself and to my laptop. It seems to work better when I do that. All right. So we are looking at Sage Intacct. We're looking at a role-based dashboard. Now, this may be your first encounter with Sage Intacct. So you may not have seen these screens before. And I want to tell you there's a lot of information here. We won't go through every field by field or box by box. However, I want you to know how easy it is for you to use and navigate. So let me go through a little bit of the user experience first, and then we're going to jump right into looking at visibility and some of these dashboard components. So the first thing is I logged in as Carla. She is the controller here. And excuse me, and part of that login has security behind it. So just think of Carla as my super user. I have all of her permissions turned on. This is fully permissioned to each user as to where they can go in the software. I also am managing multiple funds or entities, as we refer to them. So I have all of these defined, and I have them in one instance of Sage Intacct. I can change what entity or fund I am transacting in just by clicking on it, so I don't have to log in and log out. If that's something that you are used to doing, maybe perhaps in QuickBooks, all of that goes away. As far as navigation is concerned, you'll notice that it's very easy. Drop-down menus. When you look at an application, there are two menus always, an all menu and a setup menu. And this is really all of your day-to-day activities. The setup is something that you would access when you initially implement Sage Intacct. You can certainly drive or navigate from any of these menu options. Another way to navigate, which is popular, is from our process maps. And this is true of every application. So what you'll see here is icons that you can click on. It will take you right into the software. In the middle swim lane, you're going to see a best practice. So we always lay out a best practice for you. However, that does not necessarily mean that's your practice. So your business process flow might not include approving bills. Mine does, so I have that turned on. So you get to design your business process flow the way you choose to use Sage Intacct. Another way that you can navigate is by what we call the favorite menus. And those are ones that we have gold starred. So it just allows me to create a little favorites menu. And the way you're going to see me navigate today is by what we call the bookmarked menus. So each one of you can create your own personal menu. As I've done here, I've created places that I want to go in the software. I've numbered them. I can change their description. I can drag and drop and move them around and change the order. But this allows me to move very quickly to certain areas without having to menu travel. So that's the beauty of the different ways that you might want to navigate. So let's come back to that controller dashboard. I'm going to show you two dashboards today. I'm going to show you actually three dashboards. I'm going to show you controller, I'm going to show you spend analysis, and I'm going to show you month end. All of these dashboards can be permissioned. So you can set them up and you can set permission as to who can go in and out of these dashboards. You might have a dashboard that's view only, which means that you can't change anything on it, but you would have the ability to view it. Perfect for an auditor type dashboard. But this one here, remember, Carla is my super user. She can just go anywhere and do anything. So one of the things that you see up here at the top are some quick business insight. And this gives me, in this view, I can see the general and administrative expenses. I can drill into those expenses. And in this case, I can see 2 months showing here on the screen. I see November and December. And I can also drill into any area of this information so that I can drill in and I can see exactly any of the transactions down to the source bill. So when I look at this, I'm going to look at a particular bill that's going to show me exactly the detail of where this transaction came from. So when I look at this, I can see that it's been a bill that's come in, and I can look at the detail of that bill. And I can see that it's between accounts payable and postage and shipping. And I can drill in and see where this information is coming from and look at that transaction. So drilling into this was going to take me right to the source transaction for this AP bill. Oops, and that's my fault because I clicked one too many times. So let's go back and try that again. My internet's a little draggy today. Not sure why it's doing that, but whenever you click twice on something, Intact gives you that little quick error. All right, so let's give it a moment. There we go. And now we have the AP bill. So this is a bill from Costco where I went and bought some postage. Lots of information here, dates, tells me, when the bill came in, the fact that it has not been paid. I can have an attachment or picture to the bill. I can also see how I coded it. And this is where we start to see the level of detail of information that we can have on every transaction. So let's talk about this for a minute, because this is a distinct way that we report. So starting here with fund, restriction, department, site, and project are all what we refer to as dimensions. Dimensions are a way for you to tell the story of the transaction. So we know that this bill was posted to postage. What else do we know? Well, we know that it was for a vendor called Costco. So vendor is also a dimension. We know that we coded it to a specific fund. We know that it is unrestricted. We know that it was for the accounting department. It was for the main site, and it was not project or grant related. So when we look at this data in a posted format, we have dimensional data that we can then filter on at reporting time. So as an example, if I wanted to know all of the expenses for Fund 100, I can get that information because my transactions are coded and tagged to a fund. Same thing is true if I looked at department. I want to look at all of the expenses that got posted to 5330 for the accounting department. So I'm honing in on accounting. I can combine these dimensions for reporting as well. So this gives me the ability to go broad in my reporting or very narrow and detailed. So this is what our coding looks like. Let's come back up and put on our accounting hat. And if I want to know where this transaction was posted, I know which journal it was posted in. I can drill into that journal and see the transaction. And I can see right here the debits and credits. I also have the ability to look at the history of this transaction. And this is a great one because this particular transaction went through an approval process. So I entered that bill, and then I sent it to a routing step to get it approved. So until it goes through that approval, it could not be selected for payment. So all of this information is at your fingertips. You don't have to dig in the filing cabinet to find it because it's all right here online. Think about how powerful that is if you're not in the office and you have questions about some specific transaction. So these cards or columns here are what we call performance cards, key performance indicators. We're going to give you a visual indicator. We're comparing this data to a prior month. We could compare it to budget as well. And all of these performance cards have that drill down capability. Now, in your reporting, part of what you need to do is you need to focus on the things that you need to see on a regular basis. So as the controller, I want to see the statement of revenue and expenditures. Anything that you see in blue today is drillable or is a hyperlink, so I can drill into the detail. I've set this report up so that I'm comparing it against a budget and calculating a variance. I can drill into any of this information right from that report. And as I look at that information, I have that same drill down capability that we just looked at. I can also come in here and I can filter that report down. Instead of looking at it for a whole entire year, I might want to look at it for just a particular date range. So that gives me that flexibility as well. On this dashboard, I have other things besides reports. I have some graphs here. I'm showing my cash balance. I have my revenue by quarter. I've used my highlighting in order to highlight some things on a statement of financial summary. And I'm also using Sage Intacct Collaborate to communicate with other individuals that are Sage Intacct users. Collaborate is your social media layer within Sage Intacct, and this allows me at the transaction level to enter in conversations to other Sage Intacct users. So here is my Costco transaction. Here's the attachment that went with it. And you'll notice down here at the bottom, there's a conversation between Carla and Trent about this transaction. Now that conversation was entered here in this dialog box. I shared it, and then Trent got an email and also got notified in the collaboration feed that he had a conversation from Carla. And with that conversation, he got a hyperlink directly to this transaction. So he can immediately look at the transaction and he can respond in that same manner. Now, why is this important? Because old school says I would probably get up and go to his cubicle or office. I would call him. I would email him. Now I can do all that from within the software, and I can have that link to that transaction. So that's the controller dashboard. Let's put on our month-end close dashboard hat for a moment. And same concept, you get to pick what's important to you. And while the first dashboard that we looked at was role-based, this one's more functional-based. It's a month-end close. And on this one, I thought about everything that we need for month-end close, and I put it on this dashboard. So I want to know what my trial balance looks like. I want to look at journal entries that I need to approve. I want to know which applications have been closed. But what's going to help me most is this month-end close checklist. So I've created this checklist, and I created assignments, and then I assigned them to individuals. And as those individuals get assigned, they get emails. So workflow kicks off, lets them know what they're supposed to do with the dates and all the details. And then you can keep track of that, so you know where you are in that month-end checklist. Now, these checklists can be used for anything. So it does not have to be just month-end. It could be an auditor's checklist. It could be a checklist for your day-to-day activities. I like to put them on dashboards because it makes sense to me to have them front and center so that I can use them in my day-to-day activities. The last dashboard that I want to share with you is spend analysis. And this is one that organizations get excited about because there's a lot of information here that helps you drive. Even if you are a department manager, helps you drive to make sure that you are really performing at the right level and that you are matching up against your operating budget. So you can see that I've set this up with the operating budget and calculated the variance. I've done that by my different programs or my different program services. So you control the columns and you also control the rows that are on these reports. These were all done with the financial report writer. which is something that you will have when you implement and provision Sage Intacct. So you can start to see the detail of these reports and how really data rich they are. You can also see that we're going to accommodate your commitments. So we have the ability to do user defined books and to post transactions into a commitment journal. And so now you can see those functional expenses with the budget versus the actual and include commitments. So just another way for you to have that snapshot of how you're tracking from a spend perspective. All right, so we have some other areas that we want to look at. And speaking of spend, let's talk about how you can manage spend in a more tighter manner. So one of the ways that we do this is, of course, with approvals. Approvals are easy to set up. You can set up an AP invoice for approval. You can set up a purchase order for approval. If you're using purchasing, that works out great, because before you purchase anything, you must have that approval. What you can also do is take that up a notch and utilize what we call spend management. Now, spend management allows you to check at the time that you try to make that purchase. So let's just say I'm going to enter a purchase order, and I'm going to enter that purchase order to ABC Office Supplies. And as I'm entering it, I'm going to give it some information. I'm going to say, well, it's some office supplies. I'm going to give it that dimensional data. And by the way, we have 12 predefined dimensions. So you start to see how we're laying the data out. So this is some office supplies, $5,000. And at the time that I enter this, I have this little window called Show Spend Insight. So when I click on this window, it's going to show me where I am as it relates to budget. So it looks at the budget for this GL account for office supplies, the department that I have selected, and it says, well, here's your budget, Linda. Here's what you've already spent, and here's what you've committed to spend. And all of these are drilled down so I can drill into the detail. And it's doing the math across to say, well, gosh, you know, if you go ahead and make this purchase, you're only going to have $133 left. Well, I'm good to go because I've got the money. But let's paint a different picture here. Let's say that, you know, I was going to spend $15,000 instead of $5,000. That would cause me to be in a negative situation here. I would be in the hole. I don't have enough funds. At that point, you have a choice how you configure this application. Do you want to warn me that I really don't have enough money and just notify the budget administrator that I'm trying to spend money that I don't actually have budget for? Or do you want to stop me in my tracks? Either way, you can set the configuration up to work either way. The budget administrator is going to get notified. So that's going to give you that extra set of eyes, if you will, to look at what you're trying to do before you do it as it relates to your budget. And that's called spend management. And the great thing about spend management is it integrates with purchasing, with accounts payable, and with general ledger. So that allows you really, if you're not using purchasing or you're not using purchasing for everything, it also works at the accounts payable level as well. So spend management is what that application is called. So let's talk a little bit about AI, and let's talk about journal entry efficiency. So one of the things that you can certainly do in journal entries is to set up those approvals. So again, you know, I don't want everything just to run through and get posted. I want approvals to be in play. What I also would like to do is I'd like to avoid as many mistakes in coding as possible, because if I make a mistake in coding and I post the transaction, then that means I'm going to have to come back and undo it if it's wrong. So let's be proactive. Let's catch it before we post it. Well, how do we do that? Well, we have something called GL Outlier, and that's what allows you to turn on AI and machine learning, artificial intelligence and machine learning. What does that do? Well, it looks for patterns in the data. So here's the story that I'm going to tell you about this payroll journal. I use an outside payroll source. So let's just say I'm using Paylocity, and they do my payroll, and every month I upload a payroll journal to create that journal entry in Sage Intacct. So that's what I've done here. I've uploaded that to create that journal entry, and basically it has found in that journal that there is a problem. And it's telling me that it's found some unusual historical matches. So basically what it's done, AI has done this, is it's come up and it said, I don't see this combination normally. This is an anomaly. This is unusual. And before you would want to approve this, I think you should go and check it and make sure that it's right. So turning that on is just as simple as I said. You check a box, you turn it on. It's part of the underpinning of Sage Intacct. Takes about 48 hours for it to start gathering that history. And then we are going to alert you to any of these anomalies in the data. Now, of course, with journal entries, that works as well as having that approval set. So you'd want that catch, if you will, to happen before you went through the approval process. You would go and correct it and then carry forward with your approvals. Another way that we are utilizing AI and doing some automation is in bank transactions. So we connect your bank, and you can connect up to 200 banks at no additional fee. We connect your bank to the Sage Banking Cloud. And as I mentioned, that's going to bring in your bank transactions every 4 hours. So every 4 hours, these transactions are going to come in. When they come in, you will have set up what we call bank matching rules. And these matching rules are going to take those bank transactions and match them to the book transactions as best they can. When you get done with that matching, you're going to have what I call the bones, the things that didn't match, and that will be limited because we're going to do all the matching that we can. In addition, when you get ready to do your bank reconciliation, you're going to come in and choose the bank that you want to reconcile. When you click continue, this is when it's going to apply those matching rules. And then you're going to have the ability to look at transactions that are matched, unmatched, or all, look at checks and deposits, either one, look at the book side or the bank side. And then if you need to do any matching or any adjustments, you can do that right from this screen. So we've made it very comfortable and easy for you to do bank reconciliations quickly. And that is especially helpful if you have a large volume of checks that are going through your bank. You also will have access to 2 reports that we've already created, the reconciliation report and the outstanding items report. So bank rec, we're going to speed that whole process up for you. And then almost to the end here, the allocations. So I'm going to focus here on the dynamic allocations. This is the type of allocation that you do at the month-end process. So all month long, you are posting transactions into one account. And then at the end of the month, based on some basis and target, you're going to run dynamic allocations, and it's going to take that pooled amount that you put into that one account, and it's going to spread that across to the appropriate account. So we're going to create that journal entry for you. This is one that we've done against Employee Fringe, and we're looking at this as a dollar amount that we're gonna apply based on salary. So we're giving it the algorithm here it's going to calculate that and it's going to create that journal entry for you. You can set up as many of these different allocations as you need to. So it might be, you know, something around overhead, as many of these as you need to. You'll run them at the end of the month. We'll create the journal entries, and that will definitely speed up your month-end process. That's called dynamic allocations. The last one is AP automation. And AP automation, we have designed this so that no longer do you have to enter an AP bill. You've got a couple of different ways that those bills can get in. One, you can give your suppliers or vendors an email address and they can email you that bill. The second way is to upload a scanned in bill. And that's what I'm going to demonstrate to you here. So I would just tell it which fund and whether or not I wanted to create a bill with individual line items or a summary. And then I would, in my case, I would browse my files so that I could get to where I needed to get my staged information so I can show you how this works. And mine's in product. And I have some transactions that I can pull in as if this was scanned in. So here is this ADP invoice 901, and then I just click create bills. Now, what's happening in the background? It is going through an analysis and it's analyzing that bill. It's using AI. It's making sure that it has been coded correctly. So here's the analyzing that's happening. And once it goes through this analyzation process, it will either pass or fail. If it passes, you won't have any exceptions over here. If it has a problem, it's going to tell you, it's going to give you a trigger here, and it's going to say you need to go and resolve it. It could be a coding problem. As you can see here, I hover over it, it tells me my account number 5204 requires a project. I've got to go put a project in. So this is going to eliminate you having to key in those bills. So I imported 901 and here it is, and it's got a problem. It's in a draft mode, and basically it's that project that's missing. So I would come in here, I would edit this bill. You'll notice it's in a draft mode, and I would come down here and I would put in a project. And then I would go ahead and save it again as a draft. Once it's passed everything, then I've got approvals turned on, so I would submit it for approval. So that's going to eliminate you from having to go in and input those bills manually. All right, Ed, I'm ready for you to take it back. I'm going to do a quick wrap on a slide, and then we're going to move forward with, I think, our last poll. So we'll give Ed a moment to take it away from me.
Be right with you, Linda. Sorry, having a little technical difficulty here.
That's okay. That's all right. No problem. So while Ed's getting that up, I will just say that if you think about what all of this automation can do for you, it's really going to speed up lots of things. It's going to speed up that process at the end of the month. It's going to allow you to be more strategic as opposed to tactical. It's going to optimize everything that you're doing. And the way to get to this is really to utilize technology. So technology is your friend, and that's what I would suggest, that you reach out and make sure that you're taking advantage of everything that can help you. AI is certainly one of those things, but it's not the only thing. All right, so let's move to our final area.
I want to launch our final polling question, Linda.
Yeah, what tools are you using for reporting today? Excel spreadsheets, third-party reporting tools, a combination of tools, or you're clueless? I'm going to say Excel. Excel is a very well-used tool for reporting.
We still have a couple of votes outstanding, so.
Okay.
And it looks like combination of tools is leading the pack with 71% and
Okay.
Excel at 29%.
All right, great. Okay, well, thank you so much for answering the last poll, and I'm gonna just open it up and ask if there's any questions that have been posed in the chat that we should take at this time. I know we have a couple of minutes. Anything there that we should answer, Ed?
I am not seeing anything yet, but let me open it.
I'm not seeing any questions in the
I'm
chat.
not seeing anything.
All right, so I'm going to pose a question. This is one that gets asked often, and that is, we're interested in knowing how long it takes. If you were to move from what you're using today to Sage Intacct, what does an implementation timeline look like? So Taylor, any ballpark there?
Yeah, definitely. So implementation usually from the date of signature all the way through go live is typically about 4 months in total for us.
So I'm going to tell you that that's right on point. I would say that CLA, I'm going to, go rogue here a little bit. CLA is going to kick this off with a project manager and a project plan, a very organized way of, as laid out in the slides earlier, a very organized way of making sure that they are there to help you make those important decisions, building out those foundational components correctly so that you can get the end result, which normally the end result is all of the reporting. That's what's number one on everyone's list. It's great to have the data, but I need to be able to see it, and I need to be able to report on it. And that's where CLA is going to come in and be that trusted advisor for you.
Well said, Linda. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. I've worked with CLA for many, many years, and I know that they are a very organized, thoughtful process in implementing. So, all right. Anything popped up while we were answering that?
Nothing new. So.
All right. Well, on behalf of myself and Sage Intacct, thank you so much. Thank you, CLA, for your continued support, and thank you to our audience today. Appreciate you investing some time with us and riding along to see Sage Intacct.
Yeah. And on behalf of CLA, thank you, Sage, for hosting and allowing us, Linda, to join as well. Super happy. And yeah, thank you all for joining the webinar this afternoon. We really appreciate your time. If you do ever have any questions, you can reach out to us. I will be having people from my team, though, reach out to everyone just to make sure that everything's good. There aren't any lingering questions or anything like that. So you will most likely be getting a quick email sometime after the webinar.
Thank you all. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Bye.
Alrighty. Bye.